4. July to September 2024, Shifting Alliances and Broader Implications. The Arab Quartet Peace Plan. July's initiative. In July, the Arab Quartet renewed its efforts with a more robust peace initiative. Picture the high-profile summit in Cairo, where regional leaders and international stakeholders gathered to discuss a potential resolution. The proposed plan included an immediate ceasefire, a halt to settlement expansion, and a framework for renewed negotiations. The initiative was met with cautious optimism by some, but skepticism remained high. The geopolitical landscape began to shift as new alliances formed. Regional powers like Iran and Turkey increased their involvement, while Saudi Arabia and the UAE struggled to balance their normalization agreements with Israel with their support for Palestinians. August's proxy conflicts. A regional power play. August witnessed the intensification of proxy conflicts. Iran, which has long supported Palestinian militant groups, increased its military and financial support. Turkey, under President Erdogan, positioned itself as a champion of Palestinian rights, hosting conferences and rallies in support. Picture the regional power struggle unfolding, with each country seeking to expand its influence and assert its role in the conflict. The involvement of these regional players complicated the situation further, creating new dynamics and challenges for peace efforts. As the conflict became increasingly entangled in regional rivalries, finding a resolution seemed even more elusive. September's strain. The ongoing struggle. As September arrived, the conflict showed no signs of abating. The humanitarian crisis continued to worsen, with both Gaza and the West Bank facing severe shortages of essentials. Efforts to broker a lasting peace remained stalled, with no breakthrough in sight. Amidst the ongoing violence and diplomatic deadlock, the international community faced a critical question: what steps can be taken to break the cycle and move toward a lasting resolution? The answer remains uncertain, but the need for a comprehensive and just solution has never been more urgent. The path forward. As we reflect on the events of 2024, we are reminded of the enduring complexity and gravity of the Israel-Palestine conflict. The year has been marked by significant developments, from escalating violence to shifting alliances and humanitarian crises. While the conflict remains unresolved, the stories of those affected and ongoing efforts for peace highlight the human cost and the necessity for a just resolution. The future remains uncertain, but the pursuit of peace continues to be a pressing global priority. As we conclude our journey through the tumultuous events of the Israel-Palestine conflict in 2024, we are left with the pressing question of what the future holds. The struggle for peace remains as elusive as ever, but the stories and struggles of those affected remind us of the urgent need for resolution. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time. What does it take for a conflict to endure for over a century? How do deep-seated tensions between Israelis and Palestinians continue to make headlines in 2024? In this comprehensive exploration, we delve into the Israel-Palestine conflict, examining its historical roots, the latest developments, and the human stories at its heart. Join us as we uncover the layers of this complex issue and seek to understand why the quest for peace remains so elusive. Stay tuned to unravel the full picture of one of the world's most enduring conflicts. How is it that a conflict that has lasted over 100 years remains so relevant in 2024? Why do the struggles between Israelis and Palestinians continue to erupt despite countless peace efforts? What factors keep this cycle of conflict and negotiation going? Today, we embark on an in-depth exploration of the Israel-Palestine conflict, uncovering the latest events and delving into what the future might hold for this troubled region. Join us as we unravel the complexities of a conflict that refuses to fade from the global stage. 1. Setting the stage. Historical roots. The genesis of the conflict. To understand the present, we must first travel back in time. Imagine the early 20th century, a period of intense change and upheaval. The land known as Palestine, part of the Ottoman Empire, is a crossroads of cultures, religions, and ambitions. Here, the seeds of the Israel-Palestine conflict were sown, beginning with the Balfour Declaration of 1917, which promised a homeland for Jewish people while also committing to protect the rights of the existing Arab inhabitants. As waves of Jewish immigrants arrived, tensions escalated. Imagine the arrival of newcomers and conflicting nationalist aspirations dividing a community that once thrived in relative harmony. The 1948 Arab-Israeli War marked a critical turning point, with the creation of the State of Israel and the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, a historical trauma that continues to resonate today. The occupation and peace attempts fast forward to 1967, and the Six-Day War reshapes the map once again, with Israel capturing territories that remain disputed to this day. The Oslo Accords of the 1990s were hailed as a potential breakthrough, offering a glimmer of hope with the promise of a two-state solution. Yet, the agreement fell short, unable to address the core issues: Jerusalem, borders, and the right of return for refugees, leading to renewed hostilities. Picture this. The early 2000s brought the Second Intifada, a period of intense violence and despair. In the ensuing years, the conflict ebbed and flowed, with intermittent ceasefires and flare-ups but no lasting resolution. As we approach 2024, the cycle of violence and diplomacy continues, with new players and dynamics emerging on the stage. 2. January to March 2024. The escalation. January's spark, the Jenin raid. The year 2024 began with a dramatic escalation. Picture the bustling city of Jenin in the West Bank, where Israeli forces launched a high-stakes raid aimed at capturing a prominent militant leader. What was supposed to be a precise operation quickly spiraled into chaos. The raid resulted in significant casualties, including civilians, and ignited widespread outrage. Imagine the streets of Jenin filled with protesters demanding justice, their voices echoing across the West Bank. February's fallout. A divided world. As the flames of conflict roared, the international community reacted with a mix of condemnation and support. The United States, a staunch ally of Israel, defended its actions as necessary for security. Meanwhile, countries like Turkey and Iran criticized the raid, highlighting the human toll and calling for an end to the violence. The United Nations held emergency sessions, but the Security Council remained deadlocked, unable to pass effective resolutions. In February, a complex web of alliances and rivalries began to influence the conflict. The stage was set for new diplomatic maneuvers and shifting allegiances. Picture the diplomatic chess game unfolding, with global powers maneuvering to influence the outcome. March's explosion. Gaza in flames. By March, the conflict had spread to Gaza. Militants from Hamas and Islamic Jihad launched rockets into southern Israel, and Israel responded with airstrikes. The densely populated Strip faced a dire humanitarian crisis, with destroyed infrastructure and overwhelmed hospitals. Imagine the daily struggle of families in Gaza, trying to survive amidst the rubble and scarcity of essentials. As the rockets fell and the airstrikes rained down, international aid organizations struggled to provide relief amidst the chaos. The world watched with growing concern, but diplomatic efforts to halt the violence seemed to falter. 3. April to June 2024. The humanitarian crisis and diplomatic failures. The humanitarian crisis. April's desperation. As the conflict entered April, the humanitarian situation in Gaza reached a breaking point. Picture the stark reality of life in Gaza. Families without clean water, children suffering from trauma, and hospitals overwhelmed by casualties. International organizations, including UNICEF and the Red Cross, issued urgent appeals for assistance, but access to the hardest-hit areas remained severely restricted. In the West Bank, the economic impact was equally severe. Cities like Ramallah and Hebron saw their economies grind to a halt under the weight of military curfews and checkpoints. The Palestinian Authority, struggling to maintain control, faced mounting criticism for its inability to effectively address the crisis. May's diplomacy. A shattered hope. May brought renewed attempts at diplomacy. The Arab Quartet, led by Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, and Qatar, proposed a new peace initiative aimed at de-escalating the conflict. Picture the high-stakes meetings in Cairo, where leaders and diplomats from both sides gathered with the hope of finding common ground. Yet, despite intense negotiations, the talks ended in disappointment. Israel's insistence on security guarantees and the disarmament of militant groups clashed with Palestinian demands for an end to the blockade and a halt to settlement expansion. As the diplomatic process faltered, frustration and anger grew on the ground. The Israeli government's announcement of new settlement plans in the Jordan Valley fueled further unrest, and Palestinians declared a day of rage, leading to widespread protests and clashes. June's solidarity. Global Voices Unite. June saw a surge in global solidarity. Protests erupted in cities worldwide, with people demanding an end to the violence and advocating for peace. The hashtag End the Occupation trended on social media, amplifying calls for justice and highlighting the human cost of the conflict. The Pope and several world leaders called for restraint, but their appeals seemed to have little impact on the ground. In the midst of these protests, stories of individual suffering and resilience emerged. Imagine the personal stories of families torn apart, individuals struggling to rebuild, and communities coming together to support one another amidst the chaos.